Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, there's so many things going on in fields this year, and many farmers started off with wet ground early and were concerned that, wow, what are these early, cool, wet conditions going to lead to? Well, one of the problems that may be popping up this year is sudden death syndrome in soybeans. We're going to talk about it and how you can manage it on your farm.
We'll also discuss tassel applications in corn. You can do anything from fungicide to insecticide, maybe even foliar fertilizer. We want to talk through some of those options and which ones will pay on your farm this year.
Now, one thing you don't want to see on your farm this year is our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop it later in the show. But first, here's our Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
One of the new ways we're trying to get you information here at Ag PhD is with the new Ag PhD Insider. It's the Ag PhD magazine that's going to be bi-monthly, so in other words, it's going to come out every other month. And in the past, we've had a newsletter, but that was small. We have lots of good information to give you about agronomy, and then also we wanted to involve some other people in this as well. So you're going to find a lot of great articles where you're going to hear from some really high-yield farmers and some others in agriculture in the new Ag PhD Insider magazine.
It's just a great way to share a lot of information and some action plans you can take home for your farm when you've got it all right there. So you don't have to try and jot it down really quickly as Brian and I talk fast on TV or on the radio for that matter. You've got it right in front of you and you can look through it, talk with other people in your operation about it, and then share some of the real important things that are going on the farm with your non-farm neighbors and your family and say, look, here's what's going on. You can read it right here. It's going to be a really handy tool.
Yep, so again, that's the Ag PhD Insider. It's a new magazine that we're just launching now in July. So we'd really encourage you go to agphdinsider.com if you're looking for more information about that or to subscribe. You can also go to agphd.com and learn more about the magazine as well as many other things we're doing here at Ag PhD.
Well, it's tough for Brian and me because you think, well, you're on every week, you get to share a lot of information, but there's so much going on. You look at our farm alone, Brian, and all the research trials we're doing dozens of different research trials, different products, different techniques, just ways that we're trying to improve profitability, improve yield, and leave a better impact on the environment. Because one of the things as farmers that we're trying to do is not leave things exactly how they were. We're trying to make them even better by improving some of the problems that are out there in our soils, and that's what we want to share.
Yep, so when we talk here each week on TV, we only have a small amount of time.
And Brian takes up more than half of it. Let's face it right now, he's taking up more than half. So we got to give us a shot to get a little bit more information out to you.
Well, again, that's the Ag PhD Insider magazine. You can go to agphdinsider.com to subscribe today.
One of the things you might read about are some of the tough weeds that we're controlling, like our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this particular weed later in the show.
This Agro-liquid line is something special. A lot of really impressive playmakers. Take a look at Sure K. This guy is an enigma.
But wrap your head around the exceptionally high plant response when compared to conventional potassium sources, the research-proven plant availability, plus flexible application options and mixing capabilities.
Really stellar performance stats. Sure K is a true standout, and that's a winning goal on any field.
Morton is eager to make the building you've always dreamed of a reality. Visit us online at mortonbuildings.com.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
Ideal for herbicide applications, the ultra-low drifts large air-inducted droplets were designed to eliminate driftable fines without sacrificing coverage. Its thick three-dimensional pattern creates multiple angles for the spray to cover the target. Hypro, helping you spray better.
With the success of the Case IH Tiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. Because Case IH offered the first 5-axle design to give you more power to the ground, less berming and compaction, all to help you be more productive. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
One of the most critical times in a corn plant's life is right around tassel. Right after tassel is silking, or what's considered the reproductive stage 1. So it's at that point when the plant really is going through a lot of changes. It requires a lot of nutrients. It needs a lot of help. So that's why we wanted to talk today about tassel applications in corn.
Well, it doesn't just need help, Brian, it needs protection. When we think about the ear leaf's out, all the leaves above it are out, this is where we're going to generate that energy to push that plant through reproduction and fill that ear out. So if we want to have maximum yield and great test weight, we've got a healthy plant, and it starts right now.
The three main things we'll talk about here are fungicide, insecticide, and fertilizer. Let's start with fungicide. In a lot of the central corn belts, so you start talking Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, farmers have had great success spraying fungicide at that basically R1 or VT, so first reproductive stage or tassel, right in there. Spraying a fungicide at that point does seem to help quite a bit on diseases like gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight, eye spot, and many others. Well, the whole thing is that area of the country is a little bit different than my area of the country, which is South Dakota. We're drier, we don't typically have those diseases in corn, and we just have not been able to make the tassel applications of fungicide work very well. The big thing that we want you to consider here is ROI. Return on investment is so important, because the thing is, with these fungicides at tassel application, you're probably going to have to hire someone to come in and do the spraying for you. Maybe a plane, maybe they charge $8. If you throw $12 worth of fungicide on top of that, now you got $20 invested. Well, typically on the farm, we talk about trying to double our return. So if we spend 20, I'd like to gain 40. Well, you do the math, and even if we had $4 corn, you're still talking 10 bushels. If you have $3 corn, obviously you're talking somewhere around 13 bushels to the acre. So can you gain 10 to 13 bushels to double your money? Well, again, in a lot of those I states, a lot of the central corn belt, you probably can in most years. We just have not been able to in our area of the country. So if you're like me and you say, boy, I've tried a little bit, hasn't worked too well, we would encourage you maybe try some different fungicides, change the timing just slightly. Some people are going even earlier than tassel. Do some different things, experiment a little bit to see if you can make something pay.
Well, Brian talks about the area of the country, but crop rotation is certainly important. If you're in a continuous corn situation, you're more likely to have those diseases out there because you've got last year's corn stalks in the field where that residue is going to be a home for disease through the winter and then into the early spring. The other thing is going to be the hybrid reaction. With some hybrids out there, they're just racehorse hybrids without much defense. In those types of hybrids, we typically see a better return on investment using a fungicide because, hey, the plant doesn't have a very good natural defense system to stop disease. But if you've got a hybrid that has a great disease package and it's very strongly tolerant to gray leaf spot or northern corn leaf blight or maybe all the diseases in your area, well, then you're less likely to see that fungicide pay.
Personally, I like Stratego Yield, but there are a lot of really good choices. TrivaPro is excellent. A lot of people over the years have used Headline Amp. Many of those people are now switching to Preaxor because of the SDHI that's in there. But the whole thing is we just encourage you, use a product that has multiple modes of action. If you go out there with a straight Headline or a straight Quadris, something like that, you can do it, but we just have a lot greater chance that resistance is going to build up.
When it comes to fertilizer, and should I be putting some fertilizer out there late? Well, that's a great question. Have you been taking plant tissue tests throughout the season? Have you pulled a pre-side dress nitrate test to see what your nitrate levels are in the soil? If not, that would be a good place to start. to see what you need and what your plant may respond to. Can you get everything into the plant this late? Well, it's going to come down to timely rainfall. If you're farming where we're farming and you might not get a rain between now and harvest, who knows? If you put fertilizer out there, it's probably not going to get in there. But if you're in a situation where you're irrigating or you're getting regular rainfall every week, yeah, you can push a lot of nutrition still into that plant, and it's really going to matter because your plant has a lot of nutrients yet to take up to fill that ear. You think about it, with some of the nutrients, yeah, we've pulled quite a few nutrients in, building a big stalk, building all these great big leaves and a nice root system, but that ear takes a lot of energy to produce, and we see a really good response many times if you're short in something by putting those nutrients on now and getting them into the plant in time to influence that ear development.
Yeah, so the big thing there is just testing. We really like seeing soil tests. We like seeing plant tissue analysis. We want information so then we can better make decisions and spend money appropriately. I don't mind spending money. I just want to spend it the right way.
Well, take a look at your ear development. This would be one little tip. Look at the ear, see how its shape is. There are lots of things on the internet, like you can look, University of Illinois has a really nice guide as to, hey, look at your ear of corn, if it's curved or if it's short or stubby. You can see different nutrients that, oh wow, that looks exactly like when I'm short in this nutrient or that nutrient. Now it's too late to fix this year's crop, but you know going forward that, hey, I ran out of that nutrient late in the season. The other thing that a lot of the high yield growers will talk about at the Ag PhD Field Day is, hey, is your corn denting? And the correct answer when you're asked that is, well, I don't think so. No, it's probably not denting. Well, of course, it probably is denting, right? But what many of the top yielding farmers are seeing is if they keep that nutrition up all the way through the season, that their corn doesn't even dent because it is so packed full of nutrition. And the result is they're seeing much higher test weight and higher yield to boot.
All right, the last thing real quick is insecticide. And when I mention insecticide, I should also throw in the word miticide. We want to be able to control both insects and mites with this late season application. So that's usually why we're talking about products like Lorsman or especially bifenthrin. If you can control any late season insects and mites, you're in a lot better shape because what those pests will do for you is they'll damage the plant slightly just on their own and rob some yield on their own. But the bigger problem is they open the plant up for more disease, whether it's a fungal disease, which we can control with fungicide, or a bacterial disease, which we can't. Either way, it really can cause a problem out there. So be scouting your fields for late season insects and mites.
Yes, it seems like your corn is nearing the end of the game here, but don't give up before the finish line. You've got to get out there and protect that crop. If you're in an area that has a lot of disease pressure, a fungicide certainly makes sense. When you look at nutritional needs of the plant, let your soils and your plant tissue tests tell you what you need and then apply it as needed to get a good return on investment. And finally, don't let insects or spider mites take away that yield potential. You may need to protect as well with an insecticide or a miticide. And of course, if you notice our weed of the week around the edges of the field, you may want to treat that too. Can you identify this week's weed?
Unlock your nutrient investment with QuickRoots technology. It contains 2 powerful microbes that can help free nutrients bound in your soil, which can improve access to key nutrients for healthy crops, N, P, and K. Applying QuickRoots technology to seed can lead to improved root and shoot growth, increased yield potential, and maximized nutrient investment. See how you can make your fertilizer dollar go further at monsantobioag.com/QuickRoots.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
One of the diseases we've seen a lot of, unfortunately, over the last few years has been sudden death syndrome in soybeans.
I was a little nervous last year, Brian. I thought we had a little bit of sudden death syndrome on our farm. I saw some symptomology showing up once we got into the reproductive stages on some soybeans, and it turned out to be brown stem rot. And here's one of the unfortunate things with a lot of the diseases that we'll see in various crops is they look like something else. So it may be difficult to determine which one you have. So let's talk about sudden death syndrome, when you're going to be likely to see that on your farm, and what you can do about it. Sudden death syndrome often starts with early planting, cold soils, wet soils. Now, you may say, I don't have any of those conditions on my farm this year, or am I just totally free from sudden death syndrome? Well, not necessarily. Your likelihood goes down a little bit, but certainly you could still have some in your area. Sudden death syndrome starts with a fusarium infection very early, often within a few hours of seeding. So if you're planting your soybeans into warm, dry ground, that can really help reduce your risk of having this particular disease. The problem is it may not show up in your plant. You may not even notice that you have anything different in those areas that are impacted by sudden death syndrome until late in the season, because the foliar symptoms don't show up until that plant undergoes some stress. So your stress may not happen until reproduction. Once you get into those reproductive stages, it's pretty stressful on the plant. That's why we talk about fungicide applications at that point for plant health benefits. You see it with sudden death syndrome. It shows up late, and getting a fungicide out there could help keep your plant a little healthier.
The fungicide could help, but the key is being out in front of that disease. Now here's the problem. Most likely the disease is already in the plant. So all you're going to do is suppress it. You're going to stop it from getting any worse. You may have already suffered yield loss, even though your crop may look amazing. But nevertheless, if you're worried about this, if you've had sudden death syndrome in your area, we really strongly encourage you, spray at R1, spray at first flower with a good fungicide. The only one that's labeled for suppression is actually Fortix. Now, Preemptor and Fortix are really about the same thing. They've got the same active ingredients. So either one of those is going to be our #1 recommendation for sudden death syndrome. But again, you got to spray at R1, first flower.
Okay, so what you're looking for on the leaves, a lot of times it will look, like I said before, like brown stem rot. Now, as you look at the leaf, it almost looks like if your hand was on fire and you pressed it onto the leaf. It's kind of got that symptomology of yellowing around those veins. So you'll see that up through the leaf. Now, you say, okay, well, you said it looks like brown stem rot. How do I tell the difference? Just split the stalk open. If the stalk is white up the pith or up that center of the stalk, it's very likely sudden death syndrome that you're looking at. And of course, if it's brown up the stem, well, that's simple. If the center portion of that stem is brown, you've got brown stem rot most likely.
Since we're so far into the season, that's why we were talking about fungicide treatment. Earlier in the season, though, there were some things you could have done to reduce the incidence of sudden death syndrome. The most important thing, just like with many diseases, is picking the right variety. If you've got a tolerant variety, I'm not saying a resistant, but I am saying a tolerant variety, you're going to have less chance of sudden death syndrome. Now, a lot of people will tell you, well, just plant a little later. Yes, that can help a little bit, but the problem is when you plant later, you usually have lower yield. So I don't know if I really like that answer real well. What I'd probably do is plant my fields that have less chance of sudden death syndrome, my best drained ground, my highly productive ground that hasn't had sudden death ever before. I'd plant that first, plant the more tolerant varieties first, and then I'd save the worst stuff until last. Because yes, planting a little bit later absolutely can help. The other thing that can help is the seed treatment. We like a Levo that does seem to suppress sudden death syndrome.
Well, so to wrap up here with sudden death syndrome, it is a big problem, and you're likely to start seeing that out in fields now. Just keep your eyes out and do some identification to make sure you're not looking at something else like a look-alike disease like brown stem rot. With sudden death syndrome, the best thing you can do at planting time is plant your fields that don't have a history of sudden death syndrome first. Plant them to varieties that are very tolerant to sudden death syndrome. and then use a seed treatment like a Levo to try to protect yourself. If you're doing all those things, continue planting. I'm not saying delay planting at all, but when you get in there into those fields that have a history of sudden death syndrome, again, do the same things, tolerant varieties and a good seed treatment.
Well, sudden death syndrome can absolutely hurt yields, but so can our weed of the week. We'll tell you how to control this weed coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Dow AgroSciences. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our Weed of the Week is always fun because there's somebody from some area of the country that's never heard of it. And they always will reply, "Are you serious? Is that even a weed? I think you guys are just making this thing up," because a weed like this week's Weed of the Week, yellow toadflax, I get it, it's got a little bit of a funny name to it, but this is a real weed and it can really be a problem because it can outcompete a lot of the other weeds and a lot of the other desirable plants, I should say, around it for water.
Well, the whole reason why is this is a perennial plant. Now, granted, it's probably not going to live for 20 years or anything, but it is a perennial plant. So whenever you have a perennial plant, very often when you're out there, you might see it in year 2 or year 3, and it's got an enormous root system. So you think about a lot of the things that people are going to spray out in pasture ground, for example, to try to control normal weeds, something like 2,4-D. And knowing most farmers, guys are going to try to get by with spending as little money as possible. I mean, let's be honest, right? We do on our farm too. So you go out there with a, moderate rate of 2,4-D, well, all that's going to do is burn the top growth down, and then in about another month, you're going to see a bunch of new shoots coming from yellow toadflax.
Well, probably the best control method for yellow toadflax is just good crop canopy. If you fertilize the pasture well and identify what that pasture needs, not just nitrogen and sulfur, it needs other nutrients too, just like your crop ground. Maybe you're short of phosphorus. Maybe you're short of potassium out there in your pasture ground. Even if it's native pasture and you say, well, it's native pasture, I've never baled hay off it, all we've ever done is graze it. It could be naturally short in some of these nutrients. You don't know unless you're doing some testing. I would suggest testing. Fertilize that pasture and then don't overgraze. Use rotational grazing so different parts of your pasture, you can keep them growing and regrowing quickly. You can keep weeds like yellow toadflax out.
Okay, so I'm using something like Grazon, for example. It's got 2,4-D and Tordon. If you say, hey, I don't want the Tordon, I don't want something with long residual, then I'd probably run with Distinct at the full rate.
Well, I like Chaparral, Brian, but either way, you can control it with a long-lasting product. You can use something shorter lasting, even like Freelex, where you don't have the off-target volatility issues that you may have with some other products.
All right, real quick, in corn, I want something with sharpened down. I'm going to follow a status post-emerge.
Or Roundup, Brian. You can use Roundup on yellow toadflax too. And
absolutely.
in soybeans, I really like Extend soybeans. You can use dicamba products that are labeled for Extend,
Roundup.
Or you can use Roundup again.
Yep, and pre-emerge, we like our 3-pre program. It's not the best in yellow toadflax, but any tillage you do is going to help with this particular weed. And in wheat, I'm going to start with Sharpen, follow with Husky.
That's all the time we have for this week's Weed of the Week, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Unlock your nutrient investment with Quick Roots technology. It contains 2 powerful microbes that can help free nutrients bound in your soil, which can improve access to key nutrients for healthy crops, N, P, and K. Applying Quick Roots technology to seed can lead to improved root and shoot growth, increased yield potential, and maximized nutrient investment. See how you can make your fertilizer dollar go further at monsantobioag.com/quickroots.
The buzz on this line is probably the best in 10 years, both in soil and in the plant. Joe, you've been doing this for a while. What's your take?
Well, Don, you take a player like High Energy N, 3 forms of nitrogen, plus sulfur and iron, with slow release technology, he's making plays all season long.
Oh, look at his numbers. He's getting it done.
But don't forget about in response. This guy's designed for a quick release nitrogen.
It's looking like another championship season for Agro-liquid.
Morton is eager to make the building you've always dreamed of a reality. Visit us online at mortonbuildings.com.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. Because Case IH offered the first 5-axle design to give you more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction, all to help you be more productive. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
By this time in the season, you're getting used to making lots of little tweaks to your sprayer, depending on what product you're applying. In today's Iron Talk, I'll show you yet another small change that can make a big difference for you. In the middle of the growing season with just about any crop, it's time to protect your plants from harmful diseases, and that often means a fungicide application. If you've been spraying herbicides like Roundup, XtendiMax, or Enlist 1, though, fungicides work completely different. There are 2 transport systems in plants called the xylem and the phloem. The xylem can only move things upward in the plant. The phloem moves things like nutrients and water both up and down in the plant. Fungicides, once they're inside the plant, only move in the xylem. One other important consideration is that fungicides can only protect the leaves and plant parts that are out at the time of application. With this in mind, there are some little changes that you need to make on your sprayer compared to if you're spraying Roundup. First of all, with fungicides, you should use more spray volume with ground rigs performing mid-season applications. You need volume to penetrate the crop canopy and cover these plants. Secondly, you need the correct spray tips to make medium-sized droplets to get the best coverage. Flat fans work well for this droplet size, and many farmers are seeing the best results with twin fans, especially for protecting vertical plant parts like wheat heads. My favorite tips are the new 3D nozzles from Hypro, just incredible coverage. Finally, your spray pressure should be fairly high to get penetration down through the crop canopy to coat the plants. That's tough to do if you're running too fast with the ground rig, so slow down a little bit and do the job right. Spraying a fungicide is a lot different than spraying straight Roundup. Smaller droplet size, higher pressure, and higher water volumes help to achieve excellent coverage to get the job done. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to attend the Ag PhD Field Day. It's coming up Thursday, July 26th on our farm near Baltic, South Dakota. And if you're looking for more agronomic information, please tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on Sirius XM Channel 147 each weekday at 2 p.m. Central.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.